Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, a weekly podcast where we try and figure out how to do our little bit to fix the coming apocalypse.
To prevent.
Well, repair well, it's in progress if you ask me, so...
Yeah, the apocalypse has started.
We try and slow it down. Not just... there's climate, there's markets, there's politics, there's technology. I'm going to say we're in a singularity. We're in the middle of it, and it's nuts. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
And this week we're going to talk about how to be effective. This is our first recording of the new year, and we've seen a lot of stuff. I think a lot of people have been saving things up for 2019, like get Christmas out of the way and then let's really kind of double down on all of these things, even to the point that you see HSBC just launched a campaign about sort of this isn't an island. So even that, and the Brexit film came out. I've started doing a load of stuff. We're just seeing stuff coming from all over the place. And we want to add to that momentum, right?
Yes.
The battlegrounds are technological, social media, progress, social change, all these places. Because it's one thing just to do something, but it's another entire thing to actually successfully make any progress or actually, do something effectively.
Yeah, I think there's the doing something to make yourself feel better and doing something that's actually going to make a difference.
Exactly.
Are two different things.
How's it going, Ivanka? What have you been doing?
It's going well. I've started a new project. We've driven our van back from Croatia. We're now back in Brighton, so the audio quality should be marginally better.
Oh, that echo was making me sad.
Then, so we're here. I have started a new contract with the Ministry for Communities, Housing and Local Government, which means I'm in the Home Office building, which means I actually have to take ID with me to work to get through security every morning, and I'm not allowed to go in or out unescorted, which is a bit of a pain.
Metal detector?
The whole shebang.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. The building's quite interesting. They've got lots of everything about it is about reducing your carbon footprint. So if you do have a disposable coffee cup from the cafe, it is all compostable,
Right.
So it's quite interesting. But I've been very busy. So how are you?
I've got a lot of little things I've been doing. So I wrote to my MP.
Oh, yeah.
I had an idea about Theresa May, something that might get through to her, which is self-interest. I'm just going to read this out. But it's become clear that people voted Leave for many different reasons, many of which have been revealed as misleading or false since the vote. People might cling on principle to the result of the referendum, but in most cases, remaining in the EU would make them much better off than they would out. It's the responsibility of our elected leaders to make smart decisions on our behalf, not to obey our whims on subjects we know nothing about. Just as you wouldn't let a child eat sweets all day, the government shouldn't let disenfranchised people make their lives even worse by following through on something that started as a self-interested political gamble by David Cameron. Meanwhile, those of us who do see the bigger picture, or in my case, simply understand that cooperation always eventually trumps any other strategy, are furious with Cameron, May et al. Because we see a total lack of responsibility, a willful sacrificing of the futures of our most vulnerable citizens, a contemptuous attitude of you asked for it, you're going to get it, favouring the letter of the law over the spirit of the law, doing what is the worst for people to protect their own political standing instead of accepting the blowback that would result from doing the right thing. My argument is this. Theresa May, you're scared of going against the will of the people, but these people are powerless. They voted Leave because they were sick of being ignored, and this is the only real power they've ever been offered. They will be unhappy whatever happens because the system isn't built to support them. They will soon discover that immigrants or other people with no power were not to blame for their problems, and the status quo will continue as they find themselves even worse off. But those of us who do have a bit more power, a bit more education, a bit more awareness, those of us who previously accepted our political system because it didn't really affect us too much, those of us who previously had the privilege of not having to think about politics, those of us who expected you to do your job of running the country, looking after roads, the sick, the schools and the planet, we're angry now. We're angry with you. We're not unemployed, we're not silent, and worst of all for you, we're not stupid. If you drop the ball by following through with this asinine debacle, we'll come for you. We'll find another way to run things because a system of self-interested agents who've become experts at playing politics and having superficial public arguments does not seem to be compatible with the objectives of running our country. Many of us who used to grudgingly accept the status quo are becoming politically activated. Many smart people are being forced to think about these things with a new level of urgency. Our irritation has turned to fury. Career politicians will have to face us down, look us in the eye and realise that we see through them. We see their lack of principles, a lack of respect for the people who they are charged with governing, and their utter incapacity for doing their actual job of allocating our collective resources in a way that benefits the most people possible. Theresa May, cancel Brexit and we'll go back to our lives. We'll grumble and privately complain, but we'll probably have more urgent priorities than thinking about your job. But if you follow through on Brexit, you'll feel the consequences for years to come, and I don't think you're going to like them. So that's my letter that I just kind of wrote it to my MP to say, look, this is my thinking. Appeal to the fucking politician. What do you think?
I think it's a very, very powerful letter. With some very strong words and ideas. You should put it out in the world.
Yeah, I'll put it out as well. I just wanted to see. It's like there's a 14-day. I got a reply saying, we'll reply in 14 days.
14
I'm
days.
Like, OK, fine. It's 8 days ago.
That your email outlines some ideas that form the nub of what gives me hope and stops me being really depressed. The first thing that the listeners won't know is that my first Slack to Michael this morning was I didn't sleep very well because I had loads of apocalyptic dreams because I watched this video about climate change yesterday. Something I'd been storing up because I knew it was going to be bad. It's full of data, scary data. But actually, I have hope for that very reason that we are not. Yes, there is a small group of very powerful and very rich people on this planet, but there are many, many, many of us now who have more power than we think.
Yeah.
We really do.
And it's really a matter of our priorities.
Yeah.
And if they're dropping the ball, we're going to step in. We're going to get involved.
Yeah.
The second thing we've sort of like got a bit more rolling is our Done Good system.
Yes, done good.
So Ivanka and I have been talking over the last few weeks. We've got a little league table of how much we're thinking about other people, how many things we're doing for the climate, how many things we're doing for each other, like instead of just, selfish things or things we have to do. But you'd basically say, I did a good deed, whatever, I give it a number of points and then we just keep score. And we've been sort of marking up the scores each week, but a couple of weeks ago now, I actually made it so that we can bring more people in. And I just sort of done another redesign of the homepage that accommodates sort of a few users now. It's still not Twitter, but it's kind of like a very first version of something that you can use. So if you are ready to commit to the idea of doing good things for other people and getting points for that, like if you want a little bit of motivation, if you want to get into compete with us on how much good you're doing in the world, it's time. If you're ready, you can come, you can join, and you can see our scores and you can see how you're doing versus either of us or anyone else that you can sort of bring on. What's your experience of it been, Ivanka?
It does make me. I was a bit worried the couple of days this week because I was like, I've been driving back and I haven't done anything and I haven't been out into the air, so I haven't really had an opportunity to be nice to anybody or do anything. But it does make me think to make sure at the end of the day, have I done anything that's done good worthy?
Yeah.
And going into work on Tuesday, I had no idea really where I was going, what the facilities were, blah blah blah. So I'd got my sort of keep cup and a spork, but I couldn't get to the canteen, so I had to I had to take a soup bowl. But I was like, oh no, I don't need a lid and I don't need a plastic spoon. And I was like, it's kind of like, because I also don't want the minus points.
Because you lose points as well if Anchor. And this was something I'd never really considered in my original idea for this thing, but it's quite effective. It's like you don't only get points for doing good things, but you also lose points for, if you do take that plastic bag, sorry, it's -1. So that's another thing, like you commit to this, you've got to sort of like come clean about that stuff.
to yourself and to everybody else. But equally, it was quite funny because going into the Home Office building, you have to go through quite stringent security. If you know you've got laptops and all sorts of stuff, you're going to take a while. There's a guy behind me, sort of suited, white, privileged, posh bloke. And I was like, oh, you haven't got any tech on you or a bag. Why don't you go ahead of me? And he was like, oh, thank you. And then he walked past me in the queue, went, thank you. And then it got to the other end of the queue, said, thank you again. He was completely freaked out, genuinely, by this idea that I turned to him and went, would you like to go ahead? So I don't know what effect that's going to have on his life for the rest of the day, but it was quite funny watching him be really perturbed. When I would normally hesitate, perhaps, and sort of go, now that we've got the Done Good app, I obviously want to beat Michael every week.
And I'm fucking sick of it. I am getting a bit sick of, and I think that it's adding up. But I've finally put it's tallying up the wins, losses, and draws, and I have not fucking won once in 7-8 weeks, and it's like so it's just making me have to go, right, okay, I've really got to pull my finger out and figure something out to beat Ivanka at least once. At least I can beat Ian.
The other thing that is nice about it, though, is because whenever you sort of go, what is the point of just being nice to one person or whatever, it's like when you actually start seeing the points tally up, suddenly it's like, I've done quite a few good things, or I've removed a few plastic things from the world.
Yeah. So I think in terms of an effective idea, what makes this? Cause I think it feels effective to me. I mean, to us certainly, and we'll see if it. Basically, if you want to sign up to this, and if you're ready to commit to the idea of kind of getting into competition with us, come to donegood.app. donegood.app. I'll put a link in down below, and you can sort of click through and see our stuff. There's a link down the bottom, but if you click that, there's a sign in with Google button, and if you do that, then that's basically you committing to getting involved. Or just like you can drop us an email first if you're not sure, hello@grandpodcast.com. But look, this feels effective to me, and I did, and it's come out of our conversations, but it was also like something I'd been sitting on for a few years now, and I'd sort of brainstormed like a lot of things that I felt an effective platform would be. I wish I had these notes actually from years ago. It's something I learned from my first viral thing that I made. I mentioned it before, the Dickheadometer, which was just like a little questionnaire online that you asked you questions about a funny song that was on the internet to find out how much of a hipster you are. And then at the end of it, you got a score, like a percentage score of how much of a dickhead you are. And you could tweet that. And it ended up going quite viral, like around London, certainly. But I realised as I sort of, went to the park with some friends, and I noticed the social dynamic in that group. It's not just, that's cool, I'd like to do this. There was also a sort of like pressure, like a social pressure on you. Well, I've admitted to being a dickhead. My dickhead percent. Well, it's not fair if you don't too. It wasn't just this is funny, this is interesting. The virality wasn't just a positive. It also had a bit of that social obligation to it, and that was something I kind of fed in with a lot of other stuff. Like I did, I'd been running my happiness app for a while, and one of the conclusions I had from that was, I think the best route to happiness is, looking outwards, helping other people, like not thinking about yourself all the time, doing things for other people. So the goal of this was always to sort of achieve happiness through thinking about other people, but also because it's this like score table. And it's this thing, I don't want Ivanka to bloody beat me every bloody time. So I think we've sort of got a little successful microcosm of that working. So I'd like to see, there's no proof that it's going to scale.
One thing that you and I speak every week
Yes.
And so we're actively engaged in this idea of making the world better, making ourselves better, all those kind of things. So we have a rhythm to it. And we are respectfully competitive, I think, on a few things. So, like not in a... I do get some pleasure from beating you.
And I get some pain from being defeated.
So, but equally, it's all, well-spirited.
Well, the net is a positive.
Yes, exactly. When you said, we were looking at it a couple of weeks ago, and it seemed like we couldn't make it past 7. I think that presented itself as a bit of a challenge to me as well. I was like, really? It's like, surely we can do. So there's those micro competitions sort of with yourself as well as, and even discussing these things. I had a frank conversation with a colleague at work yesterday that I probably wouldn't have had if we didn't have these sorts of conversations of measuring what we're trying to do. It's like where many times I just go, I'm just going to walk past that. I'm just going to not say that. I'm like, now I'm on the points.
Whereas I've given myself some points for engaging with people that I just because of what I've been saying, I kind of have to follow through and and it's from the podcast, but then realizing, okay, this anxiety I'm feeling, at least I can save it as a point on Good. And it's not for nothing. It kind of gets accumulated.
I mean, it's not for nothing anyway, but this way it's just you get recognition.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. It's if you don't get the recognition, then it is very easy to just sort of disavow it and forget about it, especially if it didn't feel particularly successful. It's this, I kind of feel like, okay, that's in the bank now, right? Good. I did something. It's in the bank. It made me feel very, uncomfortable, but it's done. The thing on my mind, at the forefront of my mind at the moment, is this idea that I've sort of cited on the podcast already, which is I can see a through line that I think would work for me, or something that I could do that might have some effect of raising the level of conversation around things, is to sort of start this video content thing about just what if we could just start from scratch, where the technology is now, what would we do? How would we put society together, given what we know and given, where we're up to? If there weren't any sort of if we weren't mired in legacy and politics and everyone's sort of preconceptions, what would we do? The working title is now the final title is Blank State. And you can go to blankstate.org and sort of start to have a look at that. But I've been mostly putting stuff on Facebook this week, and I'm just about to finish I'm going to try and finish this first video today, which I've been furiously animating. So I kind of wrote up my kind of mission statement on that. But then I had a bit of a moment earlier this week where I thought, because I'd put some stuff out, had a bit of a disagreement with one person, kind of talked to them and ended up expanding my own understanding of something quite a lot just from having that little kind of interaction. And then just serendipitously hearing this podcast, the Team Human podcast, and just the Team Human movement is just, every single episode of that has been this is exactly the thing. This is exactly the sort of, and I'm sort of learning and being inspired by every episode. I'm starting from episode 1, and so episode 2 or 3 or something was all about the money system, and the first post I'd put on Blank State was a sort of money thing about what if we use time instead of money. But I was thinking a couple of days in, I was thinking, right, this is all a bit earnest.
Right.
And we've talked about this on the podcast, and I don't think people will tune out if it's, earnest stuff. Even I met up with someone on Wednesday, I'm moving into this new studio space, and met one of the other people there. And they sort of asked me, it came up that I was working on this thing, and I sort of mentioned Brexit, and you just saw this guy's face kind of go, as he was reminded that this thing existed. And just that's the response when, we're making a concerted effort to think about this every week, but most people, you sort of remind them about Brexit, and they're like, he'd just been talking about his art practice, and I do this with concrete, and I photorealistically paint pebbles, and then suddenly being reminded of climate disaster or Trump is flipping hell, how am I supposed to do anything if you punch me in the face with that? So that's why we've talked about, humour being important in that. So I thought, like, what if the tagline is, shut up, this is going to be easy. So I kind of put the most earnest, like, okay, here's an idea of how you could build a new society, but then make the implementation, the steps to achieving it, like a bit more frivolous. Sort of an open, jokey discussion, and and then the idea that if anyone starts to go, but you just go, shut up, this is going to be easy, and that could be something people can just sort of respond with. Yeah. So I want to see how that works out, but it's my hope that strategy it sort of like invites people to brainstorm in that yes and way, and also gives you a tool to kind of get rid of people that are being cynical, because it's so easy to be cynical if you're talking about big ideas. So humour, and this is a content thing, which obviously seems like not a thing, but then you watch the Brexit film, or about Brexit, that was won on the battleground of Facebook ads.
One of the things that a friend of mine said very early on in this whole thing is, like, look at how much money and effort they put in, and how many laws they broke and evil things they did, and their margin is tiny. We don't need to do that much work to beat them.
But that's the thing with the Brexit film, that they dumbed down the kind of Dominic Cummings motives, I thought, and kind of made it a bit of a, like, Mr. Robot kind of generic anti-establishment something or other. But he is worried about the AI apocalypse, worried about all these kind of technological revolutions, and social change is going to be upon us. And he just believes that the EU is just incapable of dealing with, although I don't see that the British government has any better hope either. So I don't know why.
Or him. His idea of dealing with it is to destroy something wicked. Well done.
Well, he's certainly he's successfully activated people like, me. You were already activated, but I wasn't activated before all this. I was just getting on with my life, and now I'm coming out. But what they did do that was a bit rough was they actually sort of dramatised all of the stuff that I kind of feel like was more after it had happened, but they had the sort of head of the Remain campaign having these frustrated conversations about the fact that people were eating up this NHS bus thing, even though it was based on nothing, and coming into the room, telling them the truth, and then just showing, sort of dramatising the emotional reaction of someone just going, I'm just sick of being ignored, and you're always calling me racist, and, like, whatever you say, like, just being right isn't enough to break through that thing. Whereas the Leave campaign were keying into this nostalgia, this this is how to be effective. Let's talk about the Leave campaign. Right, they were profoundly effective, and I didn't think they were going to make as much of that Leave bus and that slogan, "Let's take back control." They made it. They kind of overblew it. It was a bit like, it reminded me of the Doors film, where they've got the keyboard player playing like a sort of half version of the intro to Light My Fire, and he's sort of going, duh, 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 duh. And then they sort of like, are you coming out to the bar? And he's like, I'm just going to come up with some kind of intro. And I'm like, that's not. And it sort of reminded me of that. It's like got Dominic Cummings. It's got take control. And they're kind of like doing this whole thing of like not showing the board, because you're like, oh, they're going to want to see the slogan. And then it kind of comes in. And then later on they have a scene where he's reading some book about child rearing or something. It's like a nostalgia and then he's like, take back control. And then fucking 20 seconds on his face going, I am so happy with what I have just invented. It was like, so I was surprised they did that. But, as a campaign, that is very effective. That's very an emotional thing. It's like we all kind of yearn for simpler times. And it's an emotional... And they even said, like, the Remain campaign is appealing to people's minds, and the Leave campaign is appealing to people's hearts. And that was, like, of the segment of undecided voters. And you just saw that that worked in a way that just, and I just thought I could see myself as that Remain campaign guy, just trying to get through with facts and just being right. And just, it was just like, shit, I would have made exactly the same. I would have done exactly the same thing as that guy. I would have said exactly the same thing, and it would have had exactly the same result.
Well, there's this belief thing, and we've discussed this. That's whole thing, like what I believe is attached to who I am, and I don't necessarily need to change somebody's beliefs. I just need to affect their actions. So you can believe in whatever you want, but I need you to vote. Okay, you believe immigrants, vote leave. You believe NHS, vote leave. You believe whatever. So I've just got to find the beliefs. And in the course of that conversation, he highlighted to me this new sort of evangelical website that exists called Care for Creation or something. So they're evangelical Christian climate activists who are back. We're not denying creationism. This is for creationists. But the argument is, God created this for us. We must look after it, rather than going through and now listen. Creation is not a thing, and you must believe in evolution before you can believe in climate change. I think. Certainly I am guilty of this, and that sort of factual argument is obsessed with, I need you to agree with me, or I need you to understand why I think a thing, or why, because I think the fundamental problem I have is that I don't think I believe in climate change. I think I know that climate change is real, and so I want somebody to know it too, rather than to believe it, if you see what I mean. And it's actually, so in a weird way, my belief that I know stuff hampers me, because I believe that it's important that everybody should know things rather than believe. You know what I mean? It's a bit, I don't know if that's a bit too tenuous, weird.
Well, no, I'm trying to sort of get my head around it, but
it's kind of like, the bit that the Leave campaign did, that the Remain campaign, and it's still now when we argue on the internet, when we talk to our friends about politics, we still want to sort of go, no, that's not how the world works, and this is why you can't believe immigrants are evil. Well, actually, we just need to go, hey, you're an immigrant, I'm an immigrant, we're all immigrants, whatever. Like there is this whole conversation about the ends and the means.
And we have to, and it's user-centric design, isn't it? So you've got to just think about their perspective and come from their perspective. And that's not necessarily a pleasant place to be, is it? It's like...
No. No,
it
isn't.
But then there are like fundamental universal truths of being human, and this is, and that's part of what I still don't know how I'm going to connect that to my blank state thing, because I think it is a bit all high-minded and sort of like thought experimenty. I don't know how I'm going to connect that back to people's kind of inner fears and hopes and dreams. Like, maybe that's not my area of expertise. Maybe I am just going to, focus on academic-minded But
maybe just the existence of it introduces the idea that these things aren't boring.
Well, yeah,
that you can play with them. That would be an achievement, to have people play the game of what if, whoever they are.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, what if? Your what if doesn't have to be based on some fancy academic data. It could be simply be a thought experiment down the pub going, what if
we all agreed to...
hold hands when we walk down the street, what would happen? Do you know what I mean? It's that sort of like, you're not going to act to change if you don't believe that it's possible. If you can play with something, that's a positive.
If we can think about this stuff without just getting bummed out, I think that's a fucking huge win, because so many people, and me included, like, I just can't even. I just don't want to feel sad. I just want to get drunk.
We can think about this stuff without getting bummed out should be a new tagline for our podcast. That's what we're aiming for. That is what we want to be effective in. How can we think about the coming climate apocalypse without getting bummed out and without taking drugs?
But also be effective. And this is the whole, I'm just like, Done Good is working for us because it does bum me out that you're beating me. right? And I don't think the Leave campaign used any humour, did they? Probably. They sort of showed some little versions of the adverts, and it was things like competitions, like bet on the outcome of something or other, and then they'd use that to harvest people's data. Or like, how much do you trust this person? And there didn't seem to, from the dramatisation and from Dominic Cummings' writings himself, I don't think humour plays any part in it. So that's worrying.
That is, I don't know what that. I mean, it's a similar parallel. I was driving back with I had my Croatian cousin in the van, and we were playing my daughter a few bits of Croatian music, blah, blah, blah. And then we got onto this sort of theme that the Croats do incredibly well, which is highly nationalistic, call to arms type music. You know, I was translating some of the football chants during the World Cup to some of my friends. They were like, these are all war references. I'm like, yep. Anyway, so and we listened to one of these songs, and it's impossible while listening to this song to not sort of like put your fist to your heart and, you know, swear allegiance to the Croatian nationalist. You know, it's just designed to raise these huge emotions in
music
you.
Is I forget sometimes, like, music the power of music to speak directly to your emotions, even without the words. Contrast that, I had this conversation with my cousin. I was like, we need to put out a version of this song that is about protecting the environment of Croatia. You know, we need to flip the words on this song. You know, imagine the power we could have if all these people are like drummed up and ready to fight. If we had them drummed up and ready to ban fracking, or drummed up and ready to turn down their heating or turn up their aircon or whatever it is, right? And so this was a conversation we had jokingly, which we've done absolutely naff all about. And then I was contrasting that to this. There's an Extinction Rebellion song, because they do sort of pop-up choir things, and I've been trying to learn the song. Not that I'm particularly a good singer, but I figure if it's an outdoor thing, it doesn't really matter. But it's a beautiful, gentle song that can be sung a cappella. It's very sad. It's taken me literally hours of listening to it to not well up immediately, because I was like, I can't go and join this choir thing if when I open my mouth after the second word I'm going to go so I've been listening. It's very reminiscent of sort of the 60s folky protest songs, you know, very Joan Baez. What makes me not want to really listen to it, but
but you know, so it has that sort of like la 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 la, and I'm sorry, and it's all very sad but pretty, and my mum and I have been learning this song. We're going to pop along tomorrow morning to do that, but I'm not sure what action it's got. Yes, it'll tick the awareness, and it's an opportunity. You know, I'm very curious to see what effect that has, but it's definitely not going to be like, whoa, come on, let's get rid of it. Whoa. And I think we need some of that. Whoa, come on, let's protect our earth, let's protect our children, let's protect our lifestyle, let's protect our lives.
Yeah, and let's face it, like, people are already aware. Like, for decades we've been aware of climate change.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Awareness isn't the problem here. It's powerlessness. It's the fact that you don't feel like you can do anything. So I think you're right. Like, if it could turn it from everything is sad and a disaster, remember? Yeah, we know. If it was right, we're going to all do this and it's going to be enormous and we will have sovereignty over our environment.
And we will be like lions, courageous and powerful.
Controlling our destiny once more against the fate of evil polluters.
Both of us have got our fists in the air, one on our heart and one in the air. I think that's what we need to do. Michael, you're the musician.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to do, isn't there?
We'll add that to your to-do list.
I'll look at a remix.
Make software, make some music.
No, but I think something I have been neglecting a bit. I have done some music for my first video on this, but it's okay. But I should probably try and make it have a bit of that sort of soaring kind of like bigness to it.
Soaring bigness, yes, that's what we need. Soaring bigness.
Soaring bigness. It's your Trumpiversary.
It is.
Let's talk about Donald Trump in terms of his effectiveness. shall we? Because I think he's very effective at being famous.
Yes, very effective at that.
But he doesn't seem to be... I mean, what are we, 18, 19, 20 days into the government shutdown in the US at the time of recording? He's not very effective at running a government, is he? He's literally said something about, well, I can't make a deal with them because they're just unreasonable. And I thought your thing was making deals. I thought that was where you were supposed to be at your most effective, Donald. And now you're saying, but they won't give me exactly what I want. Just a load of other possibilities that I'm going to ignore. He's not really effective at the job he's got. He's effective at getting chosen for the job he's got in a weirdly messed up way. What makes him so effective at being famous? Because I want to do competitor analysis because they're winning.
Yeah.
So let's actually try and put our fingers on what it is that is allowing them to win.
This sort of effectiveness of being famous, I think, is an interesting trait of these people, like Boris, like Trump, like Gove, like Jacob Rees-Mogg, like Kim Kardashian, like Kanye, people whose objective is to be famous no matter what. Like Jade Goody, if you go back, it's like there's a campaign, I'm sure I sent you the link yesterday, which is like some online account. They've published a politician's tweet that absolutely contradicts what they're standing for today. And it's that sort of power no matter what. Boris Johnson has been, Theresa May, his presentations of her saying that, without the EU we're nothing, la la la, and now she's Brexit means Brexit. And we've got like Jeremy Corbyn, where I have just voted Remain because Remain is the blah blah blah. So there's this kind of like leadership stroke power stroke fame without principle. That trait that they seem to have, which is, there's no such thing as bad publicity type phrase. They don't care about the path. The artist that we both know told me a story that in the 80s he was in the Albert Hall out for drinks with somebody and he got introduced to Boris Johnson as, oh, you must meet this young man, he will be Prime Minister one day. And that man's, Boris's objective is to be Prime Minister one day, to be in politics. And he doesn't really care about the paths to that.
No.
Dominic Cummings, the Leave campaign, had their objective was to get the UK to vote Leave. And they didn't really care what games had to be played. There was no principle. There's no morality in the path. There's no respect for other people.
They did have this, and it was something I did see in the blogs as well. Like they did have this thread of him being a bit embarrassed about the stuff that Farage and that lot were doing, and kind of trying to distance themselves from the sort of overt racists. So it wasn't entirely kind of divorced, but then they did let them, and then there is a conversation at the end. It's like, well, you still let them do that. You still allowed, you didn't.
There's a long line between I'm slightly embarrassed by being friends with racists and distancing yourself and actively being clear
I contradicted
that
myself as I was saying that, because I realised that it was because that one of the criticisms was you know that was wrong.
Yeah.
And this thing of, facts aren't facts anymore, experts aren't experts, balance is just putting on some crank on the other side and thinking that that's okay. Like, you are allowing this to happen as part of your strategy. You can't sort of deny, you've got to take responsibility for that. So, yeah, he's just as guilty.
For one of my recent projects, I was interviewing people who campaign on certain issues. So they're sort of career campaigners who... And one of the questions I got asked was whether those are transferable skills. And I don't really think they are. If you are for this type, they're the kind of people who campaign for sustainable fishing, campaign for universal access to health care. They campaign for fairer pricing in the pharmaceutical industry. These are you have to have very strong principles to go into battle for these things. But one thing that was common across all of them is the sort of positive energy, constantly doing things, talking to anybody. But absolutely, the 3 or 4 participants that I had that were, because it was qualitative interviews, they were all massively informed on their subject area. They wouldn't be making something up on the way to a meeting. They were relying on knowledge and data to form. They were also, as well as that, they were relying on understanding their opponent's motivations. But they're the people that are trying to influence politicians. So one of the quotes was, I need to make it so that it's embarrassing for this politician to not do what I'm recommending. I need to make it so that if I'm selling this idea to a politician, I need to use phrases like, this will make you a national hero. So it's sort of manipulating the egos and ambitions of these politicians with data, but also making sure those little kind of like, you will be a national hero, or look what the Prime Minister of this country has achieved by doing that. You could do that too. Understanding who their competition is. This will make you even better than America, was one of the lines that somebody quoted when they were pitching to another president of some, they were like,
Should we be all reading Machiavelli and Sun Tzu and all this stuff? Is that something we should be doing to beat these people? Is that one of the keys to their success, or is it just sort of stuff that gives them the confidence to be completely unprincipled and completely sort of like they're focused on the rules of the game and not the values behind anything?
My definition of my own identity, my belief of my own identity, part of that is that I believe, think, whatever, that I have respect for other people, whoever they are. And then to start being truly manipulative just makes me itch.
It's disrespect. It's like you think you are more than that other person and your goal is to manipulate them. Like I've been accused by my brother of manipulating him, and I was like, what? And then I'm kind of like thinking back on it, and I'm like, well, I mean, I'm trying to manipulate you to become a happier, richer person. Is that still manipulation? Is that still me trying to make you do something that you, or is it just me coming in with an idea of something that you could do and trying to sort of push you to that because I can see a path to happiness for you?
But you see, manipulation has maybe we need a different word, because, educating, helping, cooperating, all these words, they all involve manipulation. For you to get a piece of work done in an office, changing the way you speak, hi, would you mind terribly? It'd be really helpful if you could do this thing for me, versus you've got to do that, like all these different ways that they're all manipulating. Well, they're all trying to get somebody to do a thing.
That's all we do all day is try and manipulate the world to be what we want it to be. It's like, but that's not what Boris Johnson is doing. Johnson, Donald Trump is doing. It's, you hear about him, like I heard about Russell Brand on his thing talks about when he met Donald Trump and just saying he's really nice to you. He's so nice to you. And he's like, isn't this interesting? He sort of often says, take anything in this office. You can, as a souvenir. It's very hard when someone's just, you're brilliant. I love you. You're a really fine person. Yeah. That's how he operates, isn't he? And I heard how one of the things about what made him successful was that he's not playing to the television. He's not playing to the secondary audience. He's playing to the people in the room, the people in front of him, the energy of those people. And that's the thing, there is that one person at a time thing that you have to do. And I've tried to get my, stuff that I make, get a mass of people to care about it, but no one gives a shit about a blanket Facebook post. As soon as you get a group a text message and it doesn't have your name or something in it that makes you think, oh, that's probably a group text message, it's just not got any status in your life anymore. You're you sort of feel a bit stupid if you reply to it as though it was just written to you.
I think there's something about the motives and the motivations now in the world where we're now manipulating the people we love to behave in a way that's better for them, or that we think is better for them, or we believe is better for them, because it's all grey, isn't it? It's ethic.
We can't know the future. But
no,
we're competing with people that say they do know the future.
But our intentions are for them to gain something. Whereas the problem is with Boris Johnson, this young man's going to be Prime Minister one day, is that whatever manipulations he's doing, they are for his gain primarily. If we gain from it, that is luck. That is just fortunate that something that will serve him well will also serve us well. When you're manipulating your brother to be happier, you are primarily, the goal is for them. As a side effect, you're likely to feel better about yourself and feel happy. And frankly,
maybe I'll have to deal with less shit.
If my siblings are all happy, or my family's all happy, my life is easier because I'm not dealing with it. But I can spend more time focusing on myself or whatever. Not solving other people's problems. So there is a selfishness, but the selfishness is definitely secondary. Whereas in a Boris Johnson, selfishness is primary, and any other benefits or effects are secondary. And maybe that's the distinction.
Yeah. So is the Leave, but then the Leave campaign, is that, can you call that selfishness?
Well, it's selfish in that the goal has been defined away from the consequences to other people. So they've not gone, if everyone votes Leave, hang on a minute, so we'll get our objective of, avoiding the AI apocalypse. But people might not have enough food or medicine. Maybe this is not the best way to achieve our goal. That doesn't seem to have been part of the rationale. So a little personal story. Somebody that I was, in fact, an ex-boyfriend, because I have this habit when I'm talking to people, I will change how I speak. It's not conscious. It's just the way I do. If I'm talking to somebody who thinks they're very clever and highfalutin, I will try and speak cleverly and highfalutin. And if I'm not, I won't, blah, blah, blah. And I do reflect and I pick up accents. And it's apparently it's a sign of a good communicator. According to my ex-boyfriend, it was abhorrent.
Oh, dear.
Which I thought was a very strong word and probably rang the bell of the end of our relationship. But when you are walking up to somebody at work and you sort of do which is manipulative, or is it just polite? I don't know, where you sort of go, hi, please, I'm really lost, or I don't know where that thing is, and please can you help me? And perhaps make your demeanour and your voice more, whatever, helpless. What are the negative consequences to that person? Okay, they might prioritise your thing over. Do you know what I mean? It's not. I don't know. I don't think it's selfish.
The irony of this is that they will probably actually ultimately feel good for helping you. So,
So you're doing them a favour.
When it is technological, when it is using something like Facebook, on the one hand, they had a lot of money to spend on ads. But on the other hand, that same technology that they exploited, should we be exploiting it in the same way?
Well,
although I did notice that when I did, I made my songs after Trump got elected, my sort of sad song about that I put on Facebook. And then when I tried to promote it on Facebook ads, they were like, no, it's political. So they've got sort of controls on things that I don't know how something like the Leave campaign was. Is it that they had to kind of sign something to say that they're taking responsibility, or is it that it's evolved since then?
Maybe you have to be declared to be a political organisation.
Or it might just be that, that Cambridge Analytica were using a database that was obtained from Facebook before they tightened up their security. So it's the hacking.
And also a lot of what they were doing was not, if their little personality questionnaire came your way, it wasn't necessarily overtly political. Like you said, the competition
certainly wasn't. No,
but you were saying the example of the Leave thing, going, bet on who's the outcome of this, and that's how they. There's lots they could have done that wouldn't have been obviously.
Yeah. So it's like, how do you get under the radar of what is deemed as being
promoting the blank state quiz?
But that's a whole different skill, right? That's like when you believe in values, as I do and you do, like my attitude to technology is sort of values based. So it's like, here's what the technology is supposed to be. Here's what it's supposed to do. I'm going to put this in Minecraft terms. I watched this guy building these elaborate Minecraft structures, and it's kind of crazy. It was very interesting. This is a bit of a tangent, but I think it kind of comes back to the point. You sort of figure out when you play Minecraft for long enough, you start to realise that there are certain ways to harvest resources in the optimal way. That some of these involve things like human farms. So they'll like build up these farms, like, sort of breed humans and then grind them up and turn them into, or like, so there's enemies fall down and drop loot and you can kind of do things in a certain way. And you know that because of the way the AI in the app or that the sort of behaviors work, there's ways you can exploit that in order to just kind of farm hundreds of these sort of monsters falling to their death and getting ground up, and you get all the resources. But the problem is, when you and I watched him as he upgraded to the new version of Minecraft, and all his shit broke because it was all sort of like hacking at the edges of how the thing worked. And then I think you could sort of see the frustration, the pain. And that's a thing that I don't want to deal with, that sort of thing, because it's not the point at the end of the day, the technology. The technology is like, I want to learn the thing and learn how to do it in a way that's sustainable and will be the sort of knowledge that I can take through with me as I develop my skills in the technology. The converse of that is spammers and scammers and people that find, like, SEO hackers and growth hackers and this whole industry which is all aimed at the particular version of the technology as it exists now. And it's sort of like time-limited knowledge. It's like there is this hack, there is this exploit in Google that will probably last for another couple of weeks, and we will charge a lot of money to kind of exploit this before Google notice it and so it's shut. And that's very effective, isn't it? That can be very effective.
Yes.
But it's a different attitude to technology for a start.
On the Google note, it just reminded me of I was at a client once, actually probably a couple of years ago, and Google came in for a meeting. It's a very wealthy client type thing. It definitely was not Canonical or Ubuntu, but they I don't say that for wealth, I say that for principles point of view. Mm-hmm. But Google basically came in and go, for the right money, we'll make sure that your competitors don't appear in the search results. It's like, it really was that conversation. It's,
money
it's all dirty, all of it.
Yeah.
And the question is whether you want to get dirty or you want to remain principled, or you can. I mean, one of the things I wrote down when you're talking is like this sort of knowing right from wrong. And then immediately I was like, well, how do you know you're right and how do you know you're wrong? It's like, if I'm doing something wrong, I feel a bit sick. That is, we've discussed that. It's like, how do you know that what you're doing is just icky? It's probably because it makes you feel icky. Yeah. And so, if you want to plough through that feeling, because you've got some goal that you think is worth it, that's an interesting question. And that's, I think, a question to us. Do we think being effective in helping to prevent the climate apocalypse, is it worth feeling icky for? Is it worth feeling sick for?
Is there a cost-benefit analysis? Is there a sacrifice we're willing to make to be effective in this? And what is that? What would that be? Would that, in terms of manipulating people, in terms of money, right? Like these platforms, you can either try and hack them or you can just pay them, which you just made very clear. And I'm seeing on, this new Facebook project, I'm just going to have to give Facebook money if I want to get my shit seen, right? There's no way around it. Like they've got a lot of very smart people kind of making sure the opportunities for hacking it are very limited. But if you've got money, they'll share your stuff around. They will show it to people. And I do want to figure out, okay, if money is the thing, if money is such a factor in this, okay, let's do the Kickstarter. And well, another one of my theories that I couldn't possibly back up with personal sort of results, but it's something I'm trying. It's hard to get people to just, like Boris Johnson, I don't know how far he'd get with a Kickstarter campaign or a Patreon. Maybe he'd do well, but those things kind of live on what can this do for you. I think a lot of politics is sort of like bargaining with people's self-interest about something. That is like, when I am Prime Minister, I will not forget that you did this for me. So people like bargaining with their future, with the outcome, with the result of something that may or may not ever happen, but they're sort of appealing to that self-interest. So I think an effective Patreon, often you kind of have to give people something extra for them to give you the money, or a Kickstarter, you've got to give them the product for probably cheaper than it will ultimately be. My point was about money, and it's like getting money off people, and it has to appeal to their self-interest, and it has to appeal to, it has to seem like a good investment to them.
I mean, it depends how much you're asking for. I give money to things, that are, I know that the Labour Party works on sending out emails going, hi, if you just give us £8 each, we've got loads of money. If you give us £3 each, we've got loads of money. I think the money thing is interesting, but so is this personal cost thing. What feels worse, imagining the climate apocalypse or feeling a bit bad because you've conned a few people into not flying ever again, or I don't know, or writing to their, but if you had all those Leave voters suddenly getting their knickers in a twist over climate change, climate change means climate change, maybe we'd get some action.
Well,
do you know what I mean? Like, maybe if that seems to be like, why aren't we having a referendum on the fact that climate change should be the number one priority for the country? Why isn't it? Like, how do we get that on the table so that then we can sit there going, the will of the people is to survive. What's the non-referendum equivalent is, not 100,000 people signing a petition for government to debate, but 20 million people. What is the Leave number? What did they win by? Because it's not it's
not that much.
It's not that many.
Couple of million or something.
If you could submit a petition to Parliament that had 15 million signatures on it, how could they ignore that?
Fucking petitions, though. They don't seem to do very much,
I know,
do
but
they? Or marches. Or, this is the thing, what isn't effective? Marching doesn't seem to do shit. Although, maybe there's a delayed... Maybe it's just like gives the politicians pause next time they're going to try something like this. But it certainly doesn't seem to stop the thing that's already in motion.
The thing that does change, for sure, is civil disobedience. Okay. There is every movement, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, the suffragettes, everybody who has created effective societal change has done so via civil disobedience. And so not just protest, active civil disobedience. Doesn't have to be violent civil disobedience. Violence doesn't seem to be the factor. It is ongoing, relentless civil disobedience. In a lot of that, there will be illegal acts. There will be things that are at least violence to property, if not people. But that is, if you look at history, that is where change happens.
I'm not cut out for that sort of thing.
Well, there's some interesting... It's like this choir thing that I'm doing tomorrow. That's being... I'll report back on that. But the other thing that... on that note, a story that somebody was telling me, they were walking down... the day when Extinction Rebellion stopped a lot of the streets in London. Yeah. They kept stopping them for 5 minutes, letting traffic crews stopping them. And he said he was walking along and there was a woman near to him looking like any other office worker who had a backpack on. And he said, and as she was walking, she reached into a backpack, pulled out a banner, gave the other end to the person walking next to her, and they just walked out into the road and stopped the traffic. And he said, and then he looked down the road and that had happened at a few different places down the road. So it's completely coordinated, beautifully executed, non-violent civil disobedience. And it's that kind of thing that makes every person that stopped in traffic, every person... I'm actually getting a bit goose-pimply telling the story. I was like, because it sounds, nobody came to any harm. People got delayed, they had to sit in traffic for a minute or two and think about the consequences of their actions. But it was only 5 minutes. Perhaps somebody did get delayed and get to work, but if you were doing your risk analysis on what are the potential negative side effects of all those people in traffic, somebody might have got delayed by 5 minutes and therefore got into trouble at work. I doubt, really, in London.
So that's something that fucking is like, you see, I'm doubling down on stuff I can do online because obviously that was effective as well recently, but yeah.
What would online civil disobedience look like? So you've got full-on hackers. So you've got the people like the white hat hackers who have hacked into the CIA and put a little GIF on the homepage, that kind of thing, which even that is a criminal offence, and I understand why it is. But I don't think it's much different to graffitiing a wall, which is also a criminal offence. But anyway, in Trumpiversary land, what if I was to tweet his account using some sort of bot so that it tweets his account every 10, 15 seconds? Is that illegal? Am I doing anything wrong? If I created an email that sent him my tweet 10,000 times, 5,000, 100, a million, like something that would be inconvenient but not illegal. What is the online civil disobedience equivalent of going to sit at the front of the bus?
It's writing an earnest post on Facebook about how you're leaving Facebook, and if you want anyone to talk to you, just maybe ring me up.
Yeah, just use my phone, because if you're my friend, you've got my number. Like, what are the online equivalents to these things that are just to use an account you're not supposed to sit somewhere you're not supposed. I don't know, and I think that if that's where the world is and that's where the access is, maybe that's where we should be playing. What is the online equivalent of 10 different people through London walking out into a road and stopping traffic? What is that? What is the virtual version? Because if you did, for example, if you replaced, people go to Facebook and everyone sees the same thing at the same time, you've had to have hacked in and you are actually actively doing something that is properly prison time illegal. Yeah. So what could you make not work for 2 minutes?
I think this all comes down to hacking. So it's like, what's your target?
There's no other way.
Yeah, it's all about, because the whole thing, it's hacking because it's going against the grain of how it's finding holes in how the technology is intended to operate. And so in real life, we have our laws of how things are supposed to work, and breaking the law is a lot kind of easier to do than online, where the rules are digital and they're a lot more strict.
Yeah, but what if you did like a coordinated, everybody changes their Twitter account name to Extinction Rebellion at the same time, or everybody posts on Instagram the same picture at the same time. So you go to your Instagram feed and 90% of the pictures are just some Extinction Rebellion picture, or like that is a hack. That is not an illegal hack.
Yeah, and it's like the flash mob, like
the online flash mob.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's get on Reddit and start this up.
But it requires coordination of humans, not technology. And I think that's the key thing.
Thanks very much for listening. If you like the podcast, go to grampodcast.com. If you want to do good deeds, go to donegood.app. If you want to brainstorm a different reality, a different type of country, come to blankstate.org. And where can people find you, Ivanka?
So you can find me at Ivanka on Twitter. I'd also encourage you to check out the Extinction Rebellion online, rebellion.earth, so that you can start having a little think about how you might like to join in with some civil disobedience to save the world and the future generations, and yourself, frankly.
The other place you can find me is michaelforrestmusic.com. All the music on this is mine, of my creation. And come and give us a review and shit. Come and say what you think and share it and all that, would you?
Please. Tell us, tell your friends, write reviews, rate stuff, that kind of thing. It'd be nice. The more people join in the conversation, the more chance we all have of not feeling too bummed out by the current situation.
And the more effective we can potentially be. This is grand. This isn't Michael and Ivanka's little hobby podcast. This is Michael and Ivanka's grand motherfucking 1 day a week of billable hours, and that's not cheap billable hours.
No.
I'm not afraid to say that we are dedicating to this. So, we're fucking serious about this.
We are.
So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.